Have you ever wanted something to just die already? Supernatural was a long-running urban fantasy series created by American screenwriter Eric Kripke, running from September of 2005 until November 19th, 2020. A sci-fi television juggernaut the likes of which we may never see again, Supernatural was initially about estranged siblings Sam and Dean Winchester and their quest to find their missing father John, a monster hunter who lives off the grid hoping to find the demon that killed their mother. While initially hesitant to rejoin the family business, Sam's dreamy, idyllic life as a law student is cut short when his girlfriend Jess is murdered by the very same demon that killed his mother. Now traveling town to town across the United States for revenge, the boys encountered monsters such as ghosts, werewolves, skinwalkers in one of the grossest scenes in the entire show, vampires, and of course, demons. And while the show was planned to ideally end with its third season, the 2008 writers' strike changed the third season's mid-season finale into the season finale proper. While awaiting the end of negotiations with major networks in the Writers Guild of America, Eric Kripke was forced to change his plans for Dean, who was killed by hellhounds in the Season 3 finale, and for Sam, who was meant to descend to hell in homage to Dante's Inferno, in order to accommodate the wait for Season 4. This resulted in the final two seasons of Supernatural taking a much more biblical approach, turning the brothers into mythic vessels for the archangels Lucifer and Michael, hoping to kickstart the apocalypse and fulfill God's final prophecy. Ending on a tragic and fulfilling final note, the fifth season ended with Dean a part of a new family, while Sam, after being plunged into hell as Lucifer's vessel, watching Dean's home from a distance, seemingly no longer possessed. While initially planned as an open ending for the series, Supernatural proved to be more popular than anticipated. While renewed by the CW for its 6th and 7th season, Eric Kripke would step away from the project, instead leaving Supernatural in the hands of its crew and previous staff writers. And from here, things start to spiral. The once consistent quality of the show slowly dissolved over time. While you can say there were good episodes during both the Gamble and Singer eras, there were far less dingers than there were in the beginning. The effects got more cheesy, the storylines more soapy, the monsters less scary, and the stakes got so high that before they even faced God in their final climactic battle, they faced God's sister, the Darkness, for an entire season.
I fucking hate you.
What was once a grounded, character-focused drama between two siblings in the weight of their generational trauma changed into a show about two messiahs who stopped the apocalypse twice with the help of their angel boyfriend and their pet Antichrist. When the show finally ended in 2020, I watched the finale with a sour look on my face. By this point, I had invested myself in much better television and much better urban fantasy series, but Supernatural still scratched an itch on occasion I couldn't get anywhere else. And as much as it needed to die, as well as its prequel that came out later, I still mourn the good times I spent with Supernatural. I still love the formula of episodic monster mysteries across modern Americana, dated pop culture references and all. I needed to find a substitute, something to fulfill my love for graphic horror and cozy character interactions while on the road. And lucky for me, I found the perfect replacement, in more ways than one. Hackslash is a horror comedy comic book series created by writer and artist Tim Seeley in April of 2004, originally published by Devil's Due Publishing before jumping ship to Image Comics in 2010. Originally a series of one-shots that evolved into multiple ongoing series throughout the years, Hackslash is one of those strange little IPs that sprouted in the 2000s that just wouldn't die. Even being optioned for both a film that was later shuttered before becoming a concept for a TV series which is still in development hell. The series is about Cassie Hack, the final girl of a slasher massacre perpetrated by her mother Delilah Hack, known colloquially as the Lunch Lady for her cannibalistic cooking. After killing her mother who returned from the grave to continue her mindless revenge, Cassie ran away foster family to hunt down more of these slashers wherever she could. Very early on, she met the gentle giant with a love for fine cutlery known as Vlad, a physically deformed half-black Goliath who was raised by a Czechoslovakian butcher in the basement of a Chicago butcher shop. After helping Vlad clear his name after multiple murders by the Mosaic Killer were pinned on him, Cassie and Vlad decide to team up and travel across the country, hacking and slashing whatever monsters they encounter. All for the sake of protecting those who can't protect themselves, and possibly ending this slasher phenomenon once and for all. Originally developed during his time working on Devil's Due's G.I. Joe book in response to the level of creative restrictions he had on a licensed title, Seeley wanted to make a series that was as campy and trashy as horror B-films, while still providing ample character development for his two main leads. While not the first of its kind to tackle episodic horror adventures with a young female lead, Hackslash manages to carve its own niche in a sometimes endearing way. Sometimes. While I do enjoy this book and do wish to recommend it to people, like Supernatural before it, I'm hesitant. And while with Supernatural I can say, oh, just watch seasons 1 through 5 and then maybe the anime done by Studio Madhouse, with Hack Slash I can't provide a one-sentence answer. So let's break it down.
Break it down for me.
Or should I say, slash it down. Get off the stage! What is a slasher? According to the world of Hack Slash, it's a few things. Historically, it's someone with blood infected with the essence of the Black Flower, one used by the Black Lamp Society to create paladins for their goal to take over the world with their leader, the murder messiah Akakios. In a more biological sense, it's primarily someone who has come back from the dead with intense desires for revenge or unfinished business they need to settle. In other cases, it's literal whack jobs who haven't been revived by supernatural means or given special powers from beyond the grave. I mean, in one case they're actually given superpowers, but let's not focus on that right now. And in the emotional sense of the term, a slasher is someone with a rage inside them, sins they can't cope with, can't escape from, people with a desire to lash out or with a natural disposition for violence and wrongdoing. That doesn't make every known criminal a slasher, but the people Cassie and Vlad hunt are certainly monsters. Some of the slashers in the general horror film scenarios they inhabit are admittedly pretty fun. Cases like Ashley Guthrie, a selfish little boy who murdered his younger brother and was smothered by his mother in his sleep, returning as a Freddy Krueger-esque dream jumper, killing whoever plays with his toys. Or 6-6, the guitarist who sold his soul to serve the tentacle gods of the demon realm Neph, who take virgin fans as sacrifices to create their demon spawn. However, for every dinger, there's a dud, and while there are a fair few dingers in Hack Slash, the duds are more in the details. And by virtue of these characters being slashers, they're always bound to come back. Characters like Father Wrath, a xenophobic preacher who died dressed as a woman trying to seduce his psychotic nephew, who inevitably became Father Wrath anyway after they visited non-copyright Riverdale for the first time. Or the late aughts, early 2010s terminally online internet reviewer Diabolic, whose plan to become a data messiah for the modern age included killing girls from the real-life porn site SuicideGirls.com. Suicide Girls collaborated on that aforementioned comic, Tim Seeley even consulting with the various people he depicted on how they wanted their deaths to go. This desire for crossover also ties into one of Hack Slash's greatest strengths, as well as somewhat of a detriment: crossovers with pre-existing IP. The first of which was Hack Slash vs. Evil Ernie, an obscure character from now-defunct horror comics label Chaos Comics, in which Cassie canonically dies and returns from the grave due to Ernie. That's the thing about Hack Slash that bugs me and enthralls me: canon crossovers with characters who, until then, were referenced as fictional in the context of its own narrative. As Hack Slash went on, the idea of slashers simply being movie monsters and Cassie jumping from movie to movie became less feasible, as Chucky and Herbert West from Reanimator made their appearances in somewhat crucial stories for our main leads. It's a pro and a con, because while I do enjoy these crossovers, the crossovers themselves sometimes take away from the impact of the story being told. Like the aforementioned Reanimator crossover, which coincides with the culmination of Cassie's journey to find her long-absent father as he tries to once again revive the corpse of their wife Delilah. This does not go well, obviously, and while the inclusion of a minor horror icon like Herbert West is cool, it takes away from what is ultimately a tragic character-building moment for Cassie. That's not to say all the crossovers are bad. In fact, they act as great backdoor pilots for the comics and characters they're crossing over with. Characters like the aforementioned Evil Ernie and the webcomic superhero known as Halloween Man, whose concepts and stories are adapted faithfully and with care. The art for Hack Slash isn't solely done by Tim Seeley, even though he handles writing duties and some covers. He also enlists the help of artists such as Stefano Caselli, Emily Stone and Courtney Villa, Scotty Young, who even plays a role in the comic book Carnage one-shot, Mark Englert, and the list goes on. While these styles range from cartoony to incredibly detailed, one thing is certainly consistent between all of them: the cheesecake. Sorry, I mean the action. Though, the art may sometimes be covered by the endless captions and dialogue from the many characters in Hack Slash, which is also a strength and detriment to its appeal. On one hand, I do like some of Seeley's writing. On top of great typography from whoever lettered the main Hack Slash books until 2018's Hack Slash Resurrection, Seeley knows how to plot a decent story and keeps you engaged until his grand tale of American carnage is finally over. On the other hand, I feel like this comic just doesn't know when to shut up. Its attempts at humor barely land in a modern context, and while occasionally being charming, the wit of the dialogue outstayed its welcome. Comics are a visual medium, and while I am a writer first and foremost, I know when some scenes should be, silent, so the art can speak for itself. helping the eye move from panel to panel in a natural, satisfying way. Hackslash has the potential for some really good spreads and action scenes, but it's sometimes wasted on a lot of talking. Though the dialogue can sometimes be good, especially regarding the character drama for our trauma-riddled protagonist and her hulking sidekick. Cassie and Vlad develop this lovely interplay that's almost like siblings, but it's made very clear that it's more a codependency than anything else. Vlad has nothing without Cass. Cassie has nothing without the hunt, even if she tried giving up. And the world won't stop throwing painful truths and shocking revelations about their own past at the duo's faces. So, they brave it together, regardless of what might happen. It's sweet in a way, even though Vlad is shown to be incredibly possessive over Cassie, and Cassie being unable to develop any sort of long-term relationships with people outside of Vlad. Because, regardless of any attempt Cassie makes at keeping people safe or even developing feelings of comfort for the people around her, death awaits for no man. And if you're friends with Cassie Hack, death is not far behind. It's a bleak setting regardless of its resolution, and while I can posture about the optimistic future Cassie has at the end of the main series covered in the first 5 books of the omnibus, afterward is where it gets more tricky. Beyond just crossovers with the likes of Evil Dead, a follow-up mini called Son of San Juan, as well as a 12-issue relaunch called Hackslash-Resurrection released in the years following the Image comic run's conclusion. For every seemingly optimistic open ending we received, we got another relaunch where Cassie has once again fucked up in life and needs to return to the hunt. While the first time opened the door for further characterization that hasn't been explored with Cassie since, the second time just felt pointless since it ignored the first time entirely, despite being in the same omnibus! It almost felt like deja vu, like I had been bamboozled once again into enjoying the same kind of Monster of the Week procedural and given the same consequences for enjoying it. Bigger stakes, less care, and eventually not getting why I like these characters in the first place. Or, more simply, it grew boring. With the comic once again being re-released under Hackslash Deluxe by Image Comics with bonus material done by Tim Seeley, I think I can recommend Hackslash to anyone wanting to scratch the same urban fantasy itch I described. Even if there's a dip in quality near the end, and with the 12-issue Resurrection series, I do think at least the main series is worth reading. There's a plethora of side characters and slasher scenarios I didn't get into to encourage you to dig through the series yourself and see if it's your own cup of tea. And who knows? Maybe if it gets enough eyeballs, Hackslash can rise from the grave once more. Just not as a stage play. I don't think people want to see the stage play again, Tim. I'm really sorry. Thank you for watching.